Most people think of the Great War as a static struggle in the mud. But if you want to see a real last stand, one where the battlefield was three-dimensional and the life expectancy was measured in minutes, you have to look at the Knights of the Air. By April 1918, the German air service was hitting the red line. The Flying Circus was exhausted, and the RAF had achieved a massive, crushing local air superiority. Even the deadliest predator in the sky, Manfred von Richthofen, was feeling the friction. On April 21, the Baron spotted a novice Canadian pilot. In the theater of war, hunger for the kill can be a terminal condition. He pursued his prey into a horizontal kill zone, low level, high velocity, and surrounded by ground-based machine guns and a swarm of Sopwith Camels. He didn't break off. He flew straight into a 360-degree environment of lethal lead. It was the swan song of a legend, a high-velocity collision between the age of the ace and the industrial reality of total war. Major Lionel Hawker was the British Empire's first great ace, the man who literally wrote the manual for aerial dogfighting. But by 1916, his de Havilland DH-2 was becoming a tactical relic. He found himself locked in a one-on-one duel with a young, hungry Richthofen. This wasn't a skirmish, it was a ballet of death. For nearly half an hour, they spiraled down from 10,000 feet to the treetops. Neither man would yield. With his fuel hitting the red line and his engine screaming, Hawker made a final, desperate dash for the Allied lines through a storm of lead. It was a masterclass in individual pilot resolve against a superior machine, a duel where the only prize was survival. This isn't about one man, it's about the Suicide Club of Bloody April. In 1917, the tactical life expectancy of a British pilot was exactly 17.5 flight hours. The German Jastas, equipped with the superior Albatros DLI, had the sky locked down in a kinetic furnace. Despite the statistical impossibility of survival, the RFC refused to stay grounded. These were teenage pilots in wood-end canvas kites flying straight into the teeth of the world's most elite hunting squadrons. They weren't looking for medals. They were buying time with their own lives so the big guns on the ground could see their targets. They didn't win the sky, but they held the line when the math said they should have already been dead. The war in the air proved that a pilot is a force multiplier that no engineer can fully account for. Whether it's a lone ace in a dogfight or a squadron flying into a slaughter, the mission always comes before the machine. If you're enjoying these stories of incredible humans, then please like and subscribe. It would help me out greatly. Thank you, and on to the next story. Most people think of the Great War as a clash of steel in the North Sea. But if you want to see a real last stand, one where the logistics were as impossible as the combat, you have to look at the heart of the African continent. Lake Tanganyika, 1915. By 1915, the British Empire had a problem. The Germans held a naval stranglehold on Lake Tanganyika, a body of water the size of a small country. The British didn't have a single ship there. The textbook move: surrender the interior. The British move: send two 40-foot motorboats, the HMS Mimi and the HMS Towder, across 10,000 miles of ocean. But the ocean was the easy part. To reach the lake, these men had to drag those boats through the African bush. We're talking about a trek through steaming jungles and over 6,000-foot mountain ranges using steam tractors, ox carts, and raw human muscle. It was a logistical suicide mission that should have ended in a scrap heap, yet they carried their fleet on their backs to the water's edge. The detachment was led by Commander Spicer Simpson, a man who played the game by his own rules. He wore a traditional skirt into battle and had a penchant for tactical theater that kept his men on a razor's edge. He knew the numbers weren't in his favor. Waiting for them on the lake was the Kingani, a German gunboat that was superior in every measurable metric: armor, range, and firepower. When the Mimi and Taudu finally hit the water, they weren't just fighting an enemy ship. They were fighting the exhaustion of a 6-month trek through hell. But Spicer Simpson didn't wait for a tactical advantage. He saw a window and he took it. He engaged in a 2-on-1 kinetic strike that the German command never saw coming. The engagement was short, high velocity, and brutal. The Mimi and Taudu used their speed as a force multiplier, circling the lumbering German giant like wolves. They punched through the Kingani's defenses, forcing a surrender in a theater of war the rest of the world had completely forgotten. This wasn't just a naval victory, it was a psychological decapitation. The British had materialized a navy out of thin air and jungle vines. They had turned a logistical impossibility into a strategic triumph. By the time the smoke cleared, the German grip on the lake was broken, and the ghost of Tanganyika had become a legend of the bush. The story of the Mimi and Taudu is a masterclass in audacity. It proves that in the theater of war, the most dangerous weapon isn't the biggest gun. It's the man who refuses to believe the map. It's a reminder that when the command structure says a mission is impossible, they're usually just looking at the math. They aren't looking at the grit of the men willing to carry a boat over a mountain. By October 1917, the British Empire had reached its limit with the ghost of Africa, Paul von Lettow-Vorbeck. They wanted his head on a platter. They deployed a massive force, over 15,000 troops, with nearly infinite resources and a 3-to-1 numerical advantage. They cornered the German-led Schutztruppe at the Lindi Line. The scenario was a tactical nightmare. The British thought they had the Black Lions in a steel trap. They expected a quick collapse, a standard surrender protocol. But Mahiwa wasn't a standard battlefield. It was a kinetic furnace, a landscape of razor-sharp elephant grass and thick bush where the heat hit 110 degrees by noon. Visibility was zero. The environment was designed to shred the nerves of any man who entered it. The stand began on October 15. The British launched wave after wave of frontal assaults backed by heavy artillery. But the Askari, the professional soldiers of the Schutztruppe, didn't break. They didn't even flinch. They were completely cut off. No supply lines, no reinforcements. Their ammunition counts were hitting the red line and their water was gone. They were fighting in a 360-degree envelopment, using the thick bush as a force multiplier. Every time the British surged forward, they were met by a wall of disciplined, high-velocity fire. It wasn't just a defense, it was a meat grinder. The Askari weren't just holding a line. They were dictating the terms of the engagement through sheer, unadulterated grit. The statistical impossible. By day 4, the logistics had flatlined. The Schutztruppe was down to its last crates of ammunition. But here is the friction point that the armchair generals in London couldn't calculate: the cost of victory. When the Askari finally executed a perfect tactical withdrawal under the cover of night, they left behind a shattered British force. The British had suffered over 2,700 casualties. Think about the physics of that. A small, starving unit had inflicted more casualties than they had men in their own entire command. It was a statistical anomaly. They had broken the back of a superior force through nothing but professional discipline and a refusal to be hunted. The debrief. Mahiwa remains the costliest battle for the British in the entire African theater. It proved that a small unit, if properly motivated and masterfully led, can turn a superior enemy's numbers into a liability. It's a reminder that on the battlefield, infinite resources are meaningless if you can't break the individual resolve of the man in the grass. The Black Lions of the Lindi Line didn't just survive, they redefined the limits of human endurance.